Greetings, amigops. This is Mike from Top 10 with Kyle and Mike. I'm joined, as every week, by my co-host and your dear, dear friend, Kyle. But this week, we're joined by an extra special guest. Soon-to-be brother-in-law Ian. Ian, that's not my brother-in-law. That's going to be Kyle's brother-in-law. We'll be friends-in-law. He is going to be joining us to talk about a topic about which he is very passionate, but which I do not know. So, good friends, what is this week's topic?
All right, so the topic I picked today was top 10 Dwight K Schrute moments from The Office.
Yes. I should note, I didn't mention this in the intro, but we'll be doing a top 10 list this week. We're going to be talking about a topic of Ian's choosing, debating it vigorously, and then coming to a top 10 at the end, which is wonderful because we'll be doing the top 10 Dwight Kurt Schrute moments.
Is K Kurt? It is Kurt.
Yeah,
Schrute?
Kurt.
It is
Schrute.
Kurt.
Okay, I'm already showing my naivety. You have seen The Office in its entirety many times, right?
I have watched the entire series maybe 6 times through.
Oh my God.
And Mike, I explained to Kyle last night when I first got
Yeah.
in, because I took the train here from my humble abode in the Quad Cities, but I watched as many of them as I could before I came here. So I finished the finale for like the 5th time back on like Monday. And then so from Tuesday to Friday when my train left at 11, I had the goal to watch every single episode of The Office. And I got to season 6, episode 4.
Oh my god! You monster!
By Thursday night around 1 o'clock, I was like, okay, you know what? I need to just go to sleep.
Incredible.
I need to stop.
Mischief managed.
Mischief managed indeed. That was quite the goal I set for myself. I was only 3 seasons short too.
And by the way, it's not like Ian is just doing nothing on his summer vacation. Like, you have a part-time job.
Yeah, I have a part-time job scooping ice cream.
He's not just some layabout.
No, I'm a working man.
He's not a vagrant. Well, he is a vagrant, but
Yeah, he just hopped on the old Hobo Express to Chicago town.
oh, I didn't pay for a ticket. I just wrote on.
He sat in back eating a can of cold beans.
They never checked if I had a ticket either. They were just like, hey, you can just get on. And I was like, what's...
Oh, you
That's
were a
the
vagrant
worst,
then.
because it sucks. You're like, why did I actually buy this?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, they didn't even check. Like, none of them came around and scanned the sheet.
Yeah.
All they did was just like give me a pass for a seat, and then didn't even check if I was in the right seat. So like,
It is nice that they are dressed like old-timey train conductors. I do enjoy that.
that was quite a good time.
Anyways, let's talk about Dwight.
So, so I already forgot. We're doing like his top 10 moments, or what are we doing?
His top 10, I guess you could call them most memorable moments on The
Okay.
Office, or like after you get done with the finale, the top 10 moments that a watcher might take away from the series as their favorite.
This is like essence of Dwight.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the top 10 Dwight moments that are the most Dwight moment.
This is great because we've obliquely talked about The Office a number of times on this podcast, but it'll be fun to really devote some time to it and talk about some of the specifics.
It also gives me a chance to quote as many as I want to, which is quite the goal of mine.
You're quite adept at quoting The Office.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
seeing
you've-
about 5 times, I've memorized most of them.
The world is your oyster.
Oh, let's do it.
Well, let's roll into it, Ian. What is number 10?
Number 10, this comes from season 9, episode 9.
Ooh.
This is Dwight's Christmas.
Oh, I forgot about
With
that.
Belschnickel.
Belschnickel.
With
Belschnickel. Do you guys know that he's a real person?
Yeah, he is. I looked up on Wikipedia to do some research, and he's a real thing.
The Christmas
yeah.
tradition across the world, there are many iterations of der Belschnickel. I'm most familiar with the Dutch tradition, which is called like Krampus. Which I think most people know that term.
Is it like the goat one? Like,
Yeah, it's like a evil version of Saint Nick with goat hooves and like takes kids away in bags. And I think der Belschnickel kind of is in the same lineage of that.
okay.
Probably.
Mm-hmm.
Please tell us, you. What about this scene do you love so much?
I picked this one because I just think it's maybe when Dwight emerges into his full culture. It's like when Pokemon go into their final form. I feel like this might have been one of Dwight's final evolutions here. Because when he was giving them the gifts, Phyllis kept asking if she could have the bowl, like the set of the bowls, because he's like, he gave her rubber lid toppings for mason jars, and she's like, "Can I just have the bowl instead?" You can't have the bowl.
That's when he breaks character because he's usually
and he takes like I don't even know what he has, like
the switch.
Yeah, but it's like a bunch of them. It's not even and they're but I judge your year as impish, and I whipped Jim like 15 times. I feel like that might be one of my favorite moments was when he maybe whipped Jim until he had to leave the party.
Well, it's cool because they do this with Michael too in that show, where occasionally they give you a piece of that character that like really hits you in the heart. And
yeah,
that's one of those brief moments where you realize like, okay, Dwight like really loves Jim and he's actually upset that he's leaving the Christmas party.
I feel like that was maybe one of the first times in the series that we saw Dwight's affection for Jim.
It's definitely in preparation for like the end of the show
when he makes his arm.
Right. When you have to leave the show with the understanding that they actually do love each other. Mm-hmm. This is also interesting because it's late in the show when the writers decided to just crank everybody's attributes up to like 15.
I was just mentioning that to my other sister that's not here this weekend. I was mentioning that to her. I said, like, haven't you noticed that Dwight becomes way more Dwight later in the season? And she's like, yeah. They're all caricatures of themselves.
That's exactly what happens. And in most cases, I'd say it's actually not a good thing. Like Oscar becomes like way more gay and like Andy becomes unbearable to watch.
Oh yeah.
And can I just say about Oscar? He also becomes a terrible person. Oh my goodness.
Does. After his affair with the senator, I didn't like Oscar anymore.
Terrible. And
I was like, that's not forgivable. There's a child involved here.
Really awful. And then, but so the point I'm making is that turning Dwight up to 11 and spending more time at the Schrute farm, getting more Cousin Moe's, more of his backstory, I think was actually a really, really good choice. And
so you know why, right? It's because they were going to do a Dwight show.
Oh.
Yeah, they're going to do a spin-off and have it just be Dwight only, like, as the main character.
That makes so much sense.
But really, I feel like you could argue with The Office that there's no main character.
Yeah.
But if there was close enough to one of them, it'd be Dwight. Because there's actually a statistic, and Dwight has every single episode, he has a line. At least one. Mm. And he's the only character that has at least one line in every single episode of The Office.
Wow.
Like, you could go through and watch. Like, people would think it's Michael, but then they forget that he leaves at the end of, like, season 7.
That's true. And Dwight's still there.
Dwight is still there, kicking it in Scranton.
Last rat standing. Yeah, that's awesome. I agree. I think it's interesting to see the show shift from a Michael-centric show to a Dwight-centric show with all of the good and the bad that comes with that.
Definitely.
Yeah. I feel like there will probably be some more moments that we could talk about that a little more.
There are indeed. Did you want to move on?
What's number 9?
I said number 9 is Dwight destroying Pam and Jim's house because of the mold.
There were termites, weren't there?
That comes from episode The Delivery, part 1.
Yeah.
Oh, so if I remember, she's pregnant and they go to the hospital and they ask Dwight to go like pick up her like headphones or something.
Her iPod, because it has the birth song on it.
That's right.
Yeah.
She's pregnant and they're rushing to the hospital. She looks through her go bag, which remember Michael's has nothing in it. But she looks through her go bag and she doesn't have her iPod. So then Michael calls Dwight and goes, "We need yesterday." And he's like, "Why didn't you tell me yesterday? I told you I was bored." And then he goes and he looks under the cabinet and sees all the mold, so he like gets a team together and they just start smashing shit with sledgehammers. Like that's just what they do the entire time.
And can I just say, so I don't want to step on it in case this comes up later, but will we be discussing Pam's cousin at all?
No, there is no Pam's cousin.
Okay, so this is going to be something that I'm going to stump for later, but this also brings up one of my favorite Dwight storylines, which is that he sleeps with Pam's beautiful cousin.
That's
true. And then wants absolutely no part of her because he's in the kitchen.
Until Angela comes along.
Yes, exactly. I have an image of him in his undershirt swinging a sledgehammer at Jim and Pam's cabinets, and the cousin walks in and she's like, "Oh, what are you doing here?" And he's like, "Just doing my thing." And like, he wants no part of her. It's great.
No, at the wedding even, he came back and...
Yep.
Because she came from Pam's like bridal suite when she's like, "I'm gonna go talk to Dwight." And she's like, "Okay." And that's when she tears her veil. But then she goes over to Dwight, like Isabel goes to Dwight to see what he's up to. and he's talking to someone else, and then she's just like, "Hey," and he's like, "Hey, stranger, how you doing?" Great. All right.
He's like, did you need anything?
Yeah, exactly.
It's just a very clever reversal of how that interaction tends to go.
like
Like the
in
bad
12
decision
hours.
that the next day one party regrets and the other doesn't.
Yeah, and it's
Honestly,
great that Dwight regrets it.
Yeah.
There's just so much irony in that. 'Cause
I
you
know,
look at
and I also-
Isabel-
Yeah, I'm actually gonna definitely stump for this moment, because we can get into it later, but him after he's like, I'm ravenous after a night of lovemaking.
No, and then Michael makes up the fake girlfriend that's
Yeah.
like European that doesn't exist, but
Yeah.
then actually turns out the next night to be Pam's mom. That's always a great time.
Incredible.
I will say, with going back to the home renovation, I think my favorite part of that whole bit is when they return and Jim walks into the kitchen and just sees it happening, and there were no words exchanged, and he just keeps going.
I didn't find dry pop.
Yeah. Wait, isn't there also a scene where Dwight is sleeping in their bed completely nude?
Yes, that's when he's like, that was the day of. He goes, well, I found a lot of mold, so I figured to take the night here, get a team together, do all the mold things tomorrow, and lastly, ask Pam and Jim where they got their great sheets. Then he like pulls up the picture frame of Pam and Jim and Cece like on the, or it wouldn't be Cece at that time, but it was just Pam and Jim on the nightstand. He like flips it back over and just puts on pants and like walks out. And
Incredible.
That's a good one. What's number 8?
Number 8 that comes from season 8, episode 4. That is Dwight hosting a garden party.
Yes! Okay, you were talking about what you've seen. I have watched seasons 1 to 5, or I guess probably 1 to 6, like 6 times, and have probably only watched after that like 1.5 times. And I just rewatched The Garden Party.
Oh, it's so funny.
It was so good because it's one of our more extended periods that we actually spend at Schrute Farms, especially to that point in the series. And when Jim makes him keep announcing everybody as they come in,
Master James Halbert!
he's like, "Who's the best salesman in the office?"
Master James
Halbert!
Yeah. I think it's cool because it's also a very character revealing episode because it shows that Dwight is just so invested in throwing a good garden party.
He's so bent on announcing everyone that he like just keeps doing it over and over. He doesn't see the prank until it's already
and
hit
that's one of Dwight's defining characteristics. Is just his
head down, hardworking, like dedicated to what he's doing, but this time it just didn't help him at the garden party. But I chose this one mainly because I was thinking of there are key moments in that episode, such as the Last Supper, when Dwight gets all the workers from Schrute Farms to do the Last Supper pose, but it looks really stupid. I think the closing ceremonies with the fire, where he's just like raising up in the air and spinning around. That's always fun. But there's one that stands out to me, and it wasn't when he was announcing people, but it was when Robert California comes up to him and says like, "I would spend a considerable amount of money having my birthday party here," and then Dwight goes, "Do you want the goat package that has the most goats, or like the pewter package? It still has 5 to 6 goats, but it's the least goats." He's like, "Why would you think I want goat?" And then Dwight, this is the funniest thing I think I've heard maybe this episode, was Dwight goes, "I can get you exotic meats, hippo burgers, giraffe steaks." And Robert goes, "Okay, we'll talk." And then Dwight looks at the camera like one-on-one, says, "It's all gonna be goat."
I also do love Dwight's devotion to shady and cheap business practices.
Yeah.
Of which I'm sure we will discuss further on this list.
Yeah.
You know, you might have to throw one of those in there, because I don't exactly know what you mean by that.
I'm thinking very specifically of when he buys the building.
Yes, so am I.
And instructs what's his name to
Nate
Fly the toilet.
to half fly the toilet.
Yeah,
Yep, I have that on my list.
that appears nowhere on here. We're gonna have to debate that rigorously, because that appears nowhere in my top 10.
The half fly toilet, and he's got that machine that's like
It's a wheel, and then it's just you crank it. And
Yeah, it's like a colonial woman like, making a scarf.
Reply it. It doesn't go that way.
that, and his attempt to make money by putting a gym in the office.
Dwight's gym for muscles.
This is not a gym.
It's a scene out of top 5. That's what that is.
I think it stems mostly from when he buys the office building, or Dwight's caffeine corner, or when he
definitely
puts the blocks over the over the thermostat and all that.
I think you can stem most of that Dwight cranking up to 11 from when he buys the building.
Yeah.
I feel like after Joe Bennett was like, so you turning that money into more money? And he goes, are you referring to alchemy? And she goes, no, I mean investing in property. But he doesn't have any property except for a 60-acre beet farm. So that's when he cranks up to 11 and gets the building. And I feel like that's where you see
That's the start of it.
That's definitely the uphill of when Dwight does that.
Well, it's like they waited until halfway through the show to do like a market study, and then they just found out like, oh my god, people like Dwight. It's like, what, really? And then like, it seemed like it took a while for them to kind of figure it out.
Well, they needed it too, because obviously Michael was gone, and that was when Jim and Pam went from the best part of the show to, in my opinion, unquestionably the worst part of the show. They became, I thought, really annoying around that time, and then like continued to get more and more annoying in their interactions with each other. They still were able to have interactions with other people that were fine, but I just lost interest in them, and so I think they needed somebody else to be our way in, because they just weren't it anymore.
Definitely. I feel like there was a weird tension for the viewer whenever they were in a room and they were like arguing, like when Jim invests the money to Athlete.
Yeah.
And she like screams at him.
That was just so dumb.
I understand what they were trying to do though, because like up to that point, their relationship had been so fairy tale-y, and I think what's cool about this show is they do try to make it reflect what people's actual lives in an office are like, and nobody's relationships are perfect. They just picked a weird way to illustrate that point.
But I think even before that, the latter half of the fairy tale just got boring. Like the everything up until their wedding and then maybe like shortly thereafter was perfect. Like just note perfect. And then it just was, it's like, all right, this just lost momentum.
Well, because the fun of it was the will they, won't they of it. And then once it was there, it was like, it's like, now what?
Yeah.
Well, all that stuff happens with Jim and Athlete in season 1, episode 9, right at the end there. Or season 9, episode 1, excuse me, listeners. Yeah. But it's called New Guys, and that's when that's when Clark and Pete come, and then he asks Pete about all the stuff he wants to do, and he's like, oh, just travel the world, be a millionaire, all that stuff, and that motivates Jim to take these concrete steps, and that's when I think Jim becomes more of a guy who's trying to do it for his family, but in retrospect, he's really just kind of selling out.
Sort of like our good friend Heisenberg.
Yeah, don't tell me you did this for us one more time, I swear to God. All right, what's number 7 there, Ian?
Okay, I chose number 7 because it creates a weird tension every single time that these two are ever together. And I said, Dwight's continuous affair with Angela. And I didn't put any episode number down because it happens literally from the first to the last season, like the entire time.
That's one of the best things about this character arc is that is always going on. Even when it's actually kind of cool, even when we as the audience don't have any confirmation that it's going on, we kind of always suspect it is.
Well, you can see stuff from like Jim's party where I noticed this. They actually did something cool with the shoes. Because they mentioned both the characters' shoes. So, like, this was an email surveillance episode. And they pan down to Angela's shoes, because she's like, I got soda on my shoes. And they pan down to it with the camera to show what the shoes are. And then they also, like, the roommate of Jim's doesn't think Dwight exists. So he goes, oh, I like your Birkenstocks. And he goes, yeah, I always keep a special pair in my car for special occasions. And it has just, like, the worst wool socks on underneath. But then later in the episode, they go like up to the porch and you can just see those two shoes facing each other. And that's like, okay, so yeah, something is actually going on.
That's a pretty clever bit of
It is. I think the camera there, like the camera work, I think that was pretty cool there with the cleverness of it.
Yeah. This affair, like at time, you're right. Like it has its ups and downs because sometimes it's just really fun and other times it's a little weird. Yeah. And especially when it turns into the
contract. The contract, I think, is maybe one of the weirder parts.
Oh, I disagree. I think the contract is probably the funniest part.
I love when they're going through the names and they're like, Honus, Jebediah, Jedediah.
The child shall be male. I can't control that.
Oh, you
False.
can. False. You can just keep the room extremely cold for 10 minutes after sex, and then extremely hot for 6 months after sex.
Yeah. I wrote a couple highlights that relate to the Angela relationship. One is I love when he kills Sprinkles.
Yes.
And he's like, it was
Oh my
very
gosh.
respectful. I gave her antihistamines and I put her in, and he like puts her in
I
the
sang
freezer.
her favorite songs.
Yes, they sang her favorite songs. I love that one. I also love when he is having Andy and Angela over to the farm because he's going to host her wedding, and he ends
Oh
up
my
marrying
gosh.
Angela.
Oh, I just watched that episode a couple days ago, and that's like, I think maybe one of the most trickery Dwight moments is when he's just like, he didn't know that I wasn't Andy. So
Yeah.
you married me because Andy signed our marriage license, and then
Very clever. So does this include, like, Andy and Dwight's feud? Because when they're fighting for Angela's honor, and
Oh,
Andy has him pinned on the hood of his car, and they realize that
she's sleeping with both
both of them, and they both just decide to call it quits.
I mean, we can include that. I would like that's a good idea. I was thinking more just Dwight and Angela, but I think Andy has to come into this at some point.
It's inclusive, I think, with this whole Angela affair
Yeah.
thing, but
I also love when those two become pals afterwards.
Oh, like when he takes him hunting and stuff, and like
Yeah.
yeah, and then that eventually blossoms into, like, the assistant or the regional manager rivalry. Like, it becomes a little more official
Yeah.
with Andy and Dwight, which I think the fact that probably I'd be curious to see the first mention of it. But Dwight's lust for the regional manager position is a constant from I would say probably close to the first episode all the way to the last.
It
And
might
the-
even be the first episode.
And the fact that he's oftentimes so willing to betray Michael, like,
Oh,
Okay,
yeah.
so the first reference of it is actually in Dwight's lust for the manager position is actually season 1, episode 1, the
Yeah,
pilot,
yep.
because I remember him talking about how there's going to be downsizing at the branch, but how he needs to be protected as assistant to the regional manager,
Yeah.
not his. He's like, so if there's downsizing, I'm going to be protected as your assistant. And Michael says, you mean assistant to the regional manager? Maybe Dwight. This branch isn't getting downsized. That's in the first reference of it happens.
so it's early then.
So yeah, it's as early as it could possibly be.
I don't know if you tell me if I'm trotting on your feet here, but when he attains this goal later in the show, is this something we're going to talk about later?
I don't think so.
I just think it's really funny when what's the guy who ends up buying Dunder Mifflin back?
David Wallace.
Oh,
When David-
I love David Wallace.
When David Wallace, he's like, should I kneel? And he's like, I guess.
That was on my original list, but this list has gone through 5 or 6 revisions.
That's probably an honorable mention, but like the fact that he kneels to be the regional manager just is, I think it's hilarious.
No,
the reverence he holds for the
That is
position.
the same episode where Sensei Ira is no longer his sensei, but it's
He's
the other
senpai.
sensei. Yeah, and I now submit myself to you, and like is like thrusting his hips forward when he is trying to change the belt.
All right, Ian, what's number 6?
All right, so this one comes from season 2, episode 12, which is The Injury. And this comes from Dwight getting a concussion.
Yes.
This comes from Dwight getting a concussion
Oh,
on
yes.
his way to pick up Michael.
So I'm very glad this is making an appearance. I want to hear your explanation because my inclination is to have this very high on the list.
Okay, so there's a lot of pressure then.
Don't be nervous.
I put this at number 6 because I felt as though it was more of the way he talked to Pam afterwards
Yeah.
Yep.
than to when he actually got the concussion. Because when he got the concussion, he like stumbled out of his car and threw up on the back windshield and then left his bumper on the pole on the way to get Michael. But later in the episode, you can tell it's like easily affecting him. And then the way he talks to Pam, like when she gets all those, I think it's the same time when she gets all the Russian songs off her iPod or whatever
Yeah.
it's called.
Yep.
He's like, see you later, Pam, and then leaves.
Yeah, I think this is one of those moments in the show. They come now and again. We talked about it with Dwight and Jim, where you get to see Dwight actually let his facade down and really care about other people. I don't remember It's late in the show. I don't remember which episode when he calls Pam his best friend.
That's the finale.
It's so sweet. Like, their relationship is sneakily one of the best ones in the show.
Well, when she says in this episode, she's like, am I friends with Dwight? Like, it's a really huge moment because up to this point, we thought Dwight was unlovable. And we realized here, not that necessarily he was always going to be lovable. We were probably too smart for that. But we knew that there was now something. There was like some element of him that appealed to other people. I don't know if we had realized yet that he was sleeping with Angela. I think we did. But we kind of started to see that he could be a romantic person. And we also now realized he could be a lovable friend.
When he was, yeah, exactly. Like, all he needed to do was try, and he could do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the whole point, I think, is like the underlying comedy of this part is that he was not conscious of what he was doing while he had this concussion.
Totally, but it's there. But it made us realize that it was there. He's not just always swinging his nunchucks at something.
Yes, we realized that he had the ability to be a compassionate person, but he didn't even know he was doing it. So that means it wasn't even him that was doing it.
I think it underlines the point that a lot of his typical behavior is intentionally aggressive.
Yes.
Because he sees...
Oh, for sure.
He sees that kind of relationship with Pam as a weakness. Which, like, is another, I think, important aspect of his character. But you're right. And so this is the first time, through a very hilarious plot device, that they get to show us that.
That might have been even one of the reasons they had Dwight rush to pick him up. Not just because of his love for Michael, but then they wanted the viewer to see a different side of him. So, like, this was just kind of a way of just conveying that across the listener. So I think that was a really cool moment.
That's a really good one.
That's just why it's number 6 on the list. And
we blew right through. Did you do a not top 3, Ian?
I did.
Oh, well, let's do that.
We didn't do that at 7, did we? Okay, well, I called mine a not top 10 by accident, but there's only 3 on there because I didn't have time. These also are less specific, so they don't have like the episode number or anything like that. But do I go 3 to 1 or 1 to 3?
Whatever you want. This is your pod.
So
you're the boss.
I'll start with 3. But I said my not top 3, number 3 is Dwight when he finally betrays Michael, like with Charles when he like tips them off that they're gonna meet during the Michael Scott Paper Company run. I feel like that might be one of Dwight's weaker moments when he gives in to temptation with Charles.
I kind of like that. When my favorite part is when he says he's got all these elaborate plots to bring down the Michael Scott Paper Company, and he's like talking about putting a bee on a flushable wipe, and Jim's like, so is he a good apiarist? And he's like, no, Jim, I have a bad apiarist. And it's just like the complete ridiculousness of who Dwight is. Also, it's the same episode that every time Michael asks him if he's wearing a wire, he drops his pants to the ground and lifts his shirt.
Yeah, he just lifts up his shirt, drops his pants, and like shakes his...
Yeah. So I also, this is also when he sends Michael to the restaurant and he orders a meatball parm, and he's like, the meatball parm is their worst sandwich. And then Michael's like, oh, taking disgusting. A bite of it. Yeah.
Oh, bastard.
Yeah.
That's also the same episode where he throws the fish in the vents.
Yes!
Let's not forget about that moment where he robs this Michael Scott Paper Company, takes the client leads, and then
he's like, you've been sabotaged!
Up in the... And Michael's clueless to the whole point that it was Dwight, because he's like, they're like tapping on the paper. He's like, it was Dwight.
I think it's funny that when this happens, you feel personally betrayed.
Yes.
Yes, because their alliance has been a thing since the beginning of the episode, like, series.
Yeah.
Moving on to number 2.
Sure.
This one's hilarious, but I feel like it was one of Dwight's weaker moments as well. It was Dwight putting his head into a pumpkin that he could not get off.
So this is I think what this is turning into is like not the least funny moments that Dwight has had on the show, but just like the times on the show when Dwight did something stupid.
Pretty much, like, because Dwight's character is not really one that you'd think would be stupid,
right?
So I think that yes, all 3 of my not top 3 are Dwight's maybe 3 stupidest moments throughout the show, but I chose this one because of Jim's rigorous testing. I put that in quotes. His rigorous testing with Dwight to see if he could get it off. Like, he took the head, put it on a dummy and like whacked it with a baseball bat. Yeah. Or he like picked up a knife, and like started to run towards Dwight with it. And you just see Dwight various clips of him, like sitting alone in the break room eating his lunch with the jack-o'-lantern still on his head, or like walking to his car with the jack-o'-lantern on. And I think we see there that there is no analytical part, and it just happens to be like a hilarious moment in a Halloween episode of like season 8 or 9.
Yeah.
Dude, that's one of the cold opens, right?
Yeah, it's one of the cold opens of it, which I think is just hilarious.
I think that's the perfect way to do that scene because, like, that's all I wanted to see. Like, I didn't want to see it resolved.
No,
agreed.
Yeah.
You didn't want to see how he got the pumpkin off. You just wanted to see that he had it on and he still couldn't get it off, like, late in November.
Yeah.
And the not top moment?
I think this might not come as a surprise to anyone when I say the not toppiest one is Dwight being acting manager and shooting a gun in the office. I feel like that's definitely not the smartest moment of Dwight.
It also just didn't feel like it. This is Kyle and I were talking before about movie bullshit, which is a term that this guy we like uses. This was like TV bullshit. It was like they just needed to have Dwight screw up the acting regional manager position. And having him fire a gun in the office is just simply not in keeping with who he is. Like, as ridiculous as he is, and yes, he does look down the scope of the gun to look at Michael one time and say the safety is off. Or on, yeah. Like, he's not that stupid. He's used guns before. He's not bringing a loaded firearm and shooting it in the office.
No, exactly, because the thing is, it's Belmont Adams, which is a girl's gun, which just makes it plain stupid.
Oh, yeah.
In the quotes of Joe Bennett. But, like, he's like, you think I'm gonna walk around with an empty holster? And Pam then goes, why do you need to wear the holster at all? And he's like, come on, Pam. And then he, like, flips the gun around, like, to do a trick with it, and then shoots the ground. And then Andy gets, like, a burst eardrum. Like, Dwight could have easily been fired for that.
Arrested?
He should have easily have been fired and maybe arrested for having a gun in the workplace.
Yeah, not only is it not in keeping with his character, but it also just doesn't make sense.
No, it's very illegal, and it also happens to be like just his stupid thing that Dwight did for whatever reason.
It's a weird moment, yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like it fits.
He was acting manager, like I don't know why, because he's like, I need to dominate my subordinates, but like he's acting manager. They didn't think he was actually going to be the manager.
Yeah. I was also just like, talking about Joe made me think about it, but basically all of his encounters with higher ups at Sabre, like his interview with Robert California and like, what's her name? Nellie, like when they end up doing like basically the Apple Store episode.
Oh, yeah.
Like all that stuff is bad. It's just, it's really,
it really does. It's just not good.
It's not on Dwight. Like I think that whole section of the show kind of sucks, but like the whole, like the him versus Packard thing, for the regional manager position, like I don't know, none of that really ever seemed all that funny to me. But
yeah, I totally agree with that, because when you think about the series, like 5 or 6 episodes where they were in Tallahassee, it's like test the store, last day in the store. Like Dwight's a total kiss ass, and then Packer versus Dwight was just like a stupid rivalry because we all liked Dwight already and we all hated Packer. So there's really nothing they needed to do to turn us on the Dwight side. But instead they kept making it like a rivalry between the VP position at Sabre Retail, which is just, I didn't like that at all.
It's just not interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting to see how shows, once they get some money, spend that money. And with the show, they're like, well, we'll do a Florida's half season. And it just like didn't do anything. I think a really good example of how that's done well is Parks and Rec, where it's just the same show, but they just do it in like different places. Like, just
that's
do it
very
in London.
True.
And don't change anything else. This show, I think, succumbed to like, how do we use this money effectively?
Yeah, we have Jim hang out with Stanley, and it's like, I don't know.
Like, I didn't want to turn into Stanley, but now I don't know if I have what it takes. Like, that's probably maybe one of the funniest parts of that entire half season. Like, is Jim with Stanley.
I do like that.
Totally agreed. I have one related moment, more related to the gun moment, and if you mention this later, then feel free to stop me. But when Jim and Dwight get into this big snowball fight, and it escalates to the point where Dwight is severely psychologically harassing Jim, and he's hurting Jim, and Jim gets back at him, and there's like a lacrosse stick, and there's a rock, and people are getting hurt. It didn't feel like the show. Like, the Jim and Dwight relationship is Jim sending Dwight gaydar, or putting his stapler in Jell-O. Like, that's the relationship. Or Megadesk. Like, those are the Jim and Dwight interactions that make sense. Not them, like, inflicting great physical and psychological harm on each other.
And you can really see that in Jim's character after the, like, in the closing moments of the episode where he sees all of the snowmen.
Yeah.
Because there's like at least 20 of them in the parking lot.
Yeah.
And then you just see Dwight standing over all of them on the roof. And it's like, at the end, the snowball isn't the best snowball. It was fear. Merry Christmas. And it cuts out.
Yeah.
See, you don't get any resolution with that.
I actually find that quite funny.
That part I think is funny. Him being on the roof is funny.
It also reminds me of the track in Mario Kart 64
Yeah.
where you have to dodge all the snowmen with bombs in it, just as a side reference.
It also reminds me of the Joe Nesbo book, The Snowman, that got made into a Michael Fassbender movie. The Snowman.
That's right. I think what they were trying to do here was just have one where Dwight got Jim, which, like, agreed, that's funny, but they
They did it in a really weird way.
They just took it too far. Is all.
I think they were trying to fit it with who Dwight was as a character, but they just took it too far because everything that Jim beat Dwight on was like pranking continuously, like Mike said, with the Jello stapler and all that stuff. But then Dwight did the huge prank with severe harm. Like, I bet if Jim saw any snowmen ever again, like, he would just hit them with the umbrella.
Oh, there's lasting trauma there, for sure.
I definitely think when Cece builds a snowman, it's just not going to work out.
Yeah.
Alright, now we're back on track. What was number 5, Ian?
Number 5 is Dwight tackling Ryan and screaming, "Fumble!" really, really loud. And this was the cold open of season 2, episode 17.
That's a good moment because it shows what happens when Dwight tries to sort of fit in with mainstream America. Because he's clear, his favorite sport is ping pong. He loves Ashraf Helming. Like, he loves table tennis, but he doesn't know anything about football. And so, like, his idea of football is screaming fumble and tackling the crap out of Andy. Or Ryan, sorry, Ryan.
Yeah, it was...
So why does he do it? I don't remember.
Okay, so the cold open starts with Michael and Dwight tossing a football around. And they're just like, so if we ask the client if they want paper, they're either going to say yes or no. And then they just keep doing that for like 3 minutes. And they hit Jim's
they're just
stuff off
like
his
doing
desk.
the,
And then he throws it to Dwight again, but Jim intercepts it. And it's kind of like a keep away where he like gives it to Phyllis, who gives it to Stanley, who gives it to Creed. And then Creed gives it to Ryan. But then Ryan's like on his BlackBerry, and Dwight just comes out of nowhere, just, fumble! Really loud. And then Ryan's just on the ground, and then Dwight causes the biggest chaos I think we're gonna see until like season 5 or 6.
Yeah.
But then he just tackles everyone. Stanley goes flying. Accounting is like up in like just papers everywhere. And then he just gives it back to Michael, and then Michael just like keeps going and like just throws it to Pam. And I think that maybe the funniest thing from that opening is just not only Dwight's moment, but when he like gets up, his glasses are just like on his nose. He's just like standing like squared up with Michael trying to get the football.
yeah, that is a good one.
This is one that is weak enough that could change, because I think there's some in the honorable mention spots that I have going on that could beat this moment. But I feel like it's only funny if you really see it on the show.
It's a lot, it's physical. Yeah,
It's
it's
very
definitely
physical.
physical comedy. But
It's much harder to explain what's happening in this episode, Cold Open, than if you just watched it.
Agreed.
true. Okay, so number 4 then?
Sure. Number 4 comes from season 9, episode 1, and it's Dwight naming Clark Dwight Jr. I chose this one because it shows that Dwight not only wants a son, but he'll do anything to get one.
Is this the one where like he and Clark go do a sales pitch to like one of their clients and they pretend to be father and son and they pretend to like the son is an idiot, and then as soon as they realize that their client's son is actually in charge, they pivot and then Dwight pretends to be an idiot?
This episode leads up to that moment.
Okay.
But that's not the same episode. But that's a very valued point, because I do like that episode. This is the episode where Andy comes back from that Outward Bound trip, and they set up the slack line, and then Clark is really, really good at it, and
yeah.
Dwight just sucks at it. So then,
That's right.
every single time that Dwight gets beaten by Clark, he's just like, "This is a stupid activity. I would hate to be good at it." And then he like sets up the trapeze with the printer. And then he's like, "This is what a real salesman looks like." And then just like throws his arms up over the building. I think That's why I chose it, just because it shows how willing Dwight is to go to prove a point, which is that he's the better salesman at the end of the show.
It's funny because like, Dwight is a really good salesman.
Yes, that's one of the great points.
Yeah. We've talked about this briefly with Michael Scott before too. Like every now and again they slide you something that reminds you like, oh yeah, that's why this guy is where he's at. Like,
that's why he's a manager. He didn't just get magically promoted.
Yeah, like when Dwight pulls in the don't they get like the yellow pages or something?
Yeah.
From that's the whole
the white whale. That's when Andy gets rid of the account when he comes back.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
That's also in season 9.
Yeah, I was surprised at how much I actually enjoyed Clark's presence on the show. I thought he was actually a worthy addition.
I think that came up with you and me the other day, didn't it, Kyle? We were talking about how we actually kind of liked Clark and Plop.
Yeah, like surprisingly, because at that point in the show, you're conditioned to expect anything new is bad. And then by the end of it, you're like, wait a minute, these guys are pretty funny.
Yeah, I think it's just a great addition to the show because when Jim leaves and they hire someone part-time, Clark gets the job. Mm-hmm. And at that point, I don't know if it was just because of all of Dwight's picks were just really, really odd people, but I was also, with Pam, hoping that Clark gets the job, and then my second choice would be like Nate or something. But yeah. I don't think you'd want Nate at an office job. That's just my humble opinion.
He's good. All right, that brings us to number 3, which means it's time for some honorable mentions.
Oh, all right. So I'm gonna go from high numbers to low numbers again, and then we can just. I have a 6. So I felt like there are so many Dwight moments that a high number of honorable mentions was needed.
Yeah, and with these, we'll just kind of probably have to just rattle through them.
Yeah, we'll just like pepper them off. So I said number 6 was Recyclops. That was also
okay.
Cold Open.
I had that on my list of honorable mentions.
And I just think that's funny because it shows the evolution of Dwight's character. Because one of them, he like shows, did you know you could saw a milk carton in half and then use it as a compost pile? And then the last one's like, destroy! I am Recyclops! And like sprays aerosol around the office.
It's just a tendency to take things way too far.
Oh my gosh. And then he just makes it a fictional thing. It's like, he was in the world where he once loved and I got destroyed. He's gonna destroy Earth too. I just think that's a really weird episode. Down to number 5, I think that's Lice. When Dwight comes in the hazmat suit. And it's like, it stands for hazardous materials. Men's fashion wear. And then I think maybe the funniest part of that episode, it comes in 2 parts, is where leading up to it, the rising action, he stabs his leg, like his pant leg, with a pair of scissors, causing his hazmat suit to be compromised. So he goes into Michael's office and he just takes the pin off of the grenade.
Yeah,
like,
yes.
In 5, as soon as I let this go, it's going to fill the room with, and then he just drops it, and then like, it just, boom, the entire office is filled up, and then that leads to the car, where for some reason he has it again. Like, he has the pin already off and again, and then he just drops it, like, oh, and it just fills the car up again.
That's a really good one.
Yeah. This one's gonna take a lot of explanation, but I'll see if you guys know what I'm talking about. Number 4 is Dwight's perfect crime.
Yes. I recently mentioned this to somebody. I love this one. It's where he seduces the woman. He tells her he's going to Canada, but he goes to Mexico, and they make love all night, and she's Tiffany, right? Like, it's the
it's like, my perfect crime would be breaking into Tiffany's at midnight. Yeah. I see a daughter there, because I go for the chandelier. It's priceless. She is Tiffany. We make love all night.
Yeah.
I tell her to meet me in Mexico, but I go to Canada. I like the cold. Then I go to Berlin. She sees me. I tell her to meet me in Paris, and she sees me. She says she's never taken another lover. We then make love all night again. Then I go to Berlin. That's where I stash the chandelier.
It's amazing.
And I think it's obvious why I picked that, as to I need no explanation.
No, it's just funny.
Number 3, I said is Dwight's wedding with Angela at the end of the season. Or series, because I just think that's like the resolving to number 7 on my list, which was the continuous affair. We finally get closure to that. And I feel like that's like a more happy Dwight moment. You're like, hey, attaboy. Like,
it's nice.
Yeah.
It's a nice moment.
Number 2 is back into more funny territory. It said Dwight trying to see if Donna is cheating on Michael.
Yes, I like that one.
And I think maybe my love for this stems from when he was just on the car, like man spreading, is like, hey stranger,
Oh, and he
Don't
tries to
see you
seduce-
here
that's
often.
right.
And he's like in the gym doing like the hamstring press, and he's just like, ugh.
Yeah, it ties in nicely with when he opens Dwight's gym for muscles, because it's like his total misunderstanding of like masculinity and like mainstream norms for men.
He's just doing the thigh press. I think that's the funniest episode. Is 'cause
Yeah.
I was listening to something, and I heard someone say like, no man can ever go on that machine and look another guy in the eyes. He just like spreads his legs constantly and like is doing that thigh press machine. I think that's the funniest part.
I think it's great that he assumes, like, since she did not fall for him, she cannot possibly be cheating on him. And he believes that. Like,
Yeah.
I gave everything. I did all my moves on her. Nothing.
No, but then in the episode, he says, Michael, I have some bad news. She is cheating. It's a hilarious moment. Number one, and this is the first time we see Dwight have any power in the series, is Dwight picking the healthcare plan.
Oh yeah, that's the first. Is that season 1, right?
Season 1, episode 3, I think.
Yeah.
Is when he does that. It's healthcare. And, he gets to pick all the stuff, and then Jim pranks him.
Yeah.
Like, I have mad cow disease, and then he reads off all the stuff.
It's the one with the really embarrassing one that Kevin's like, I think some people have that.
And then he says something about an inverted penis, and
Yeah, just say,
and Meredith's like, could you mean vagina? Because if you mean vagina, I'd like that covered.
I thought your vagina was removed during your total hysterectomy. Yours is different than a vagina. I still have a vagina.
That is really good.
That's pretty good. That's reminding me of Dwight's total misunderstanding of anatomy and relationships, and when he asks Toby to explain gay sex to him, and he doesn't understand how it's done.
How does one penis open up to receive the other?
Yeah.
Is it called red vining when two gay men intertwine?
It's called red vining, isn't it?
We heard it was called red vining.
Excellent. That's a solid list of honorable mentions.
Do you guys have any more to add to that? Because I'd love to hear them.
We'll do that after you go through your whole list so we don't accidentally spoil anything.
All right. Sounds good. So I think we're at the top 3 now, right?
We are indeed.
Okay, well, the top 3, I think, is the top most funny moments. So this is where it's going to move into slightly more hilarious territory. Number 3 comes from season 5, episode 14, and that is Dwight harvesting Dummy's organs and cutting the face off during the CPR.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh my god.
Yeah. This is, I think, probably one of the last moments before Dwight totally jumps the shark. Like, this is before he's totally a parody of himself. It is amazing when he just takes it off and he puts the face on his face, and then when so I think that part's funny, but to me the funniest parts of this, both for Michael and Dwight purposes, are when they're at corporate talking to David Wallace and whoever that guy is from the other. Those are the best parts, when he's like, and now we understand, like, you shouldn't cut the faces off of people. And it's great to see what Dwight's takeaways are from this.
He's like, I did not kill Stanley. His own heart almost killed him.
Yeah.
I should not be revoked as safety officer. Like,
yeah.
He has a bunch of moments like this, or isn't he a part of, like, he's part of that, like, street gang, like, the vigilante.
The Knights of the Night.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're like he's a, like, junior sheriff marshal, like,
Yes.
his, like, the karate, like, his self-defense stuff, like, it's just, like, his crazy devotion to these weird practices that he, wanting to practice them so badly, inserts them in places where it's completely inappropriate.
Oh my gosh. That's just the funniest part, though, is when he just takes something and just makes it his own, quote, quote, but in reality, he's just making it like a terrible situation.
I think if we were talking about just overall funniest office scenes, that one probably gets thrown in here high.
Yeah.
Like, even people that don't watch The Office, I think, know about the staying alive.
But I also love that they start with the wrong staying alive.
Yeah. He started with,
I was afraid, I was petrified.
What would you...
That's I Will
Stanley,
Survive, right?
Yeah. Stanley, if you had a heart attack and you were all alone, what would you do? Probably die.
Are you okay with that?
I'm okay with the logic of it.
All right, we lost him because no one called 911. So what's next? And he's like, "What is next, Rose?" And she's like, "I don't know." And he's like, okay, someone get me some styrofoam container and a bucket of ice chips. We only have minutes to harvest. I think this ties into best Creed moment when he's like, he doesn't have a wallet. I checked.
It's a funny scene that Dwight ends up making his own. It definitely belongs high on this list.
Yeah.
How about number 2?
So I mentioned this episode previously with Dwight tackling Ryan and screaming fumble. This moment comes from season 2, episode 17. This is literally named after the episode, Dwight's speech.
Mm.
And I'm not going to pound on this table because I don't know exactly how sturdy it is, but if we were at an area that had a larger table, you already know I'd be pounding my fists and raising them into the air like Dwight does because Jim tells him he majored in public speaking in college.
This is after Michael completely fails at his, right? And Dwight comes up to take his place, or
Michael bails during it.
Yeah, that's right.
But it's like, cause he goes up there and it's like, blood alone can move the wheels of history! Salesmen of northeastern Pennsylvania unite because it is, and then he like holds the microphone and is like, together that we prevail! And it's just boom, boom.
It's amazing. I want to probably talk a little bit more about some of Dwight's fascist leanings, but it's so great. It's also a really good example of TV writing that picking Mussolini was exactly the right choice for this, because obviously there were some other choices that would have been too extreme and some other ones that wouldn't have been as funny. Mussolini is the absolute edge of historical dictators you can pick to have Dwight imitate without us totally checking out on him.
I think, like, the fascist, just to check in on this isn't part of the thing, this is a side point. Dwight's fascist upbringings.
Yeah, I think, so maybe we'll mention it now, but I want to put high on this list. One of my favorite lines that Dwight ever has is when he talks about his Uncle Mannheim still puttering around down in Argentina. I'm actually still very disappointed in the show because it then mentions that Showa protested his visa, which I always found really disappointing because I thought that was a funnier line without that. Like, without explaining it, just saying my Uncle Mannheim still puttering down in Argentina is so funny. I didn't like that they over-explained it, but...
Yeah, because, like, we get it.
Yeah, that's the joke. Like, you already told us the joke. But that whole storyline is amazing when he talks about, like, yes, he fought we got into a war we should never have gotten into. And Pam's like, yeah, really good point. He's like, World War II. Like, he's a bunch of things like that are great.
No, and then when Jim and Dwight are, like, a team at the end, he's like, see, we used to be rivals. Just like France and England. But now we're out. And he's like, nope, stop there, Dwight.
Yeah.
I suspect that I know what number 1 is.
I'm sure, Mike, you know pretty much about what number 1 is, too.
I hope I know what it is.
I hope I get this right then. But number 1, possibly the best Dwight Schrute moment from The Office, comes also from season 5, episode 14, Stress Relief Part 1, the cold opening with the fire drill. Dwight's fire drill, as that's what I call it on my list, but just everything about that is just the funniest thing, starting from today smoking is going to save lives. Like, I gave a PowerPoint presentation and no one paid attention to it, and then it's like, what's the protocol? What's the procedure? What's the procedure?
Does he also just say PowerPoint sucks?
Yeah, he's like, PowerPoint sucks.
This is absolutely the best Dwight moment because, well, first of all, there are a couple times in the show where I laughed so hard that I actually was crying. This is one of them. The panic, like them ramming the printer against the door.
Michael throwing the overhead out the window.
Save Bandit! And she throws the cat.
Oscar, pull me up! I can't, you're too heavy. I only weigh 82 pounds!
Oscar's in the ceiling. Dwight before it. It's like the chaos. Because they only did like probably one take because they completely destroy the office. It's so funny, and the prep for it when he's heating up the doorknobs, he throws it in the trash can. Like
he hammers the key into the door.
Yeah,
and gives all the door stops hammered into the foundation of the wall, and it's Andy's going over, and they're touching the doors, and it's like, what does warm mean?
And the fact that while all that's going on, he's remaining calm and like you said, what's our protocol? Where do we go next? Like,
A damp rag, a damp cloth perhaps.
because he really believes that he's providing instructional value to them.
Yeah. This is another area that Dwight easily could have like gotten fired and put in jail for
Should have
starting
been.
his fire like in the office. But I think maybe the funniest part that I take away is like Dwight kind of knowing that he's the leader of this.
Yeah.
So Phyllis goes, "Oh, my purse!" And Stanley goes, "Leave it, woman!" And then Dwight looks at the camera and goes, "Phyllis, material things can be replaced. Human lives, however." And then he has to break off because he wants to run to the annex to see what else they're doing and like tell them what to do, because like that's breaking all of his character that he has on the show.
Yeah.
And being just Dwight. I think that's maybe the funniest part. And then, like you said earlier, with the cutting the face off, I think going to corporate and seeing
Yeah.
what it was after Stanley has a heart attack, maybe one of like the funniest resolutions I think I've ever seen.
It's incredible. Absolutely incredible. You said it all.
All right. Let's recap real quick, and then we'll get into our picks that we think might warrant consideration.
Alright, so the number 10 is Dwight's Christmas. Number 9 is Dwight destroying Pam and Jim's house because of mold. Number 8 is Dwight hosting a garden party. Number 7 is Dwight's continuous affair with Angela. Number 6 is Dwight getting a concussion. Number 5 is Dwight tackling Ryan and screaming fumble. Number 4 is Dwight having Clark named Dwight Jr. Number 3 is Dwight harvesting Dummy's organs and cutting the face off. Number 2 is Dwight's speech. And number 1 is Dwight's fire drill.
A great start to this list.
Yeah, that is an admirably constructed list. I've got a couple. So I got about a billion, but I've been kind of narrowing it down. So there's a couple that I think might genuinely warrant consideration. One is, I forget what the episode's called. I think it's called like Sales Call or something. It's the training day episode with Ryan when he tells him
It's called the initiation.
Yeah, the initiation. He tells him he's going to plant his seeds in him, and he has him wrestling fear in the form of Cousin Moe's in a cape. That's one.
He forgets the sales call halfway through. Is like,
Exactly.
so there was no sales call. The sales call! And like he just speeds to the place.
Exactly. It's a very Dwight episode. It's a great one. I like the one where he gets promoted to secret assistant regional manager after the fight with Michael. After he shows him Sensei Ira and they get into the big fight. His joy at that moment is amazing. I also love the Beets Motel episode. So when Jim and Pam stay over and Dwight is crying and they just hear, oh. He also reads from Harry Potter in this one. He's like Voldemort's furious anger. And you also see the outhouse door slamming open and shut while Mose is sitting out there. So that to me is like I think that's gotta be on there. Another great Dwight moment that I love is when Dwight takes down Roy. That I think should definitely be on this. That's one of his like real heroic moments when
Completely agree.
You see that Dwight really is ridiculous, but he's always prepared. And then one that probably shouldn't be on, but that I like, is when the Wallace family has the cocktail hour at their house, and Dwight is just going around the house inspecting the whole home, and he's like tapping on stuff and checking through the bricks, and he asks the kid like what kind of wood the cherry. He's like, I don't know.
And at the end, he's on the roof, like inspecting the chimney cap or whatever.
He's like kicking it and stuff.
It's amazing.
That's a really good one.
I was talking to Kyle yesterday, like just after dinner, and I said, I left one out on purpose to see if you guys are going to find what it is. But here's the thing. I don't remember what I was talking about.
Oh no.
I've got a couple more. I wonder if
one of them.
It'll be one of them.
But yeah, I'm just scrolling through I found it. All right. Try to guess what it is.
Okay. I had a couple that I like. Not many that I'm like super serious about. One is when he and Stanley prank Jim into giving them meatballs.
I do like
Are you ready for some meatballs?
We're never gonna buy meatballs again. Michael's retreat, so when he like goes into the woods and records himself, and the fact that Dwight just is there the whole time watching him, doesn't want to eat the mushrooms.
Yeah.
This is more of a Jim moment than a Dwight one, but when Jim convinces Dwight that he's his own perfect assistant regional manager,
yeah,
through the series of assistant regional manager tasks.
You'll always have the upper hand if you have a good arm.
I love it. Dwight's like, I need this done. And he was like, ooh, I'm super busy, but I'll get my best guy on it. And then Dwight ends up doing it.
Crack the whip because he's real stubborn.
The Hey King episode where
I do like that one.
That was on my list at one point. I had to move it.
That's really good. It kind of slides into like when Dwight becomes more and more rustic as the show goes on. And the last one, and the only one I'm really serious I think actually should be on the list, is the Pretty Woman spoof when he has when he goes to he wants to buy that like wizard or dragon or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
They like tutor him how to dress up all nice and whatever, and then you were covered in blood, sir.
I'm a beet farmer.
Yeah.
So those are my ones. That's the only one I'm serious about. I think you're right, Mike. I think when he protects Pam and hits Roy, I think, or with the pepper spray or whatever, I think that belongs on there.
The one that I was thinking about, I was seeing if you guys knew what I was talking about, was when Dwight is at the company picnic and Pam gets hurt and he goes, okay, I'll stall him. Just go. There's a hospital like a few kilometers south of here.
And he punts the volleyball away.
I'm so mad that Pam got hurt.
Yeah.
And like kicks it and is like, I'll get it. And then walks away really slowly.
Yeah.
And then there's another part in the episode where it's like, how many people are we going to let get hurt before we put an end to this? 1, 2, 3. Hear me out. 4, and it just goes on like that.
I think we can kind of wrap up. Well, we'll see. So, all right. So let's get moving here. Mike, which ones do you think we're serious about, and where do you see opportunity to slide those in?
So I think Pretty Woman, Dwight taking down Roy, and I think that the training day episode, or the initiation episode with Ryan, are the ones that should be on. And I think that Dwight tackling Ryan,
that one's vulnerable.
Yeah, I think that Dwight Jr. is vulnerable. And I think that as much as I love this episode, I think that the Dwight destroying Jim and Pam's house,
that could also be...
It's a good one, but it falls into a category that I think is well represented, which is Dwight getting up to shenanigans.
That's true.
We could honestly make that a category at like number 9, and then just condense all the stuff that we have there.
Yeah.
I think it's a really solid one, but I just think it's like number 11.
Yeah.
It just misses.
I agree.
Okay, I think... So that's 3 off and 3 on, so I think that works out really well.
And I actually think if you look where those are, I actually think that we might even be able to just drop some stuff in, like, pretty cleanly.
I think that's true. I also think that we need to move Der Belschnickel up actually really high, because
Dwight's Christmas.
I think that is the combination of... First of all, watching Rainn Wilson do that, and like the stuff with Jim, and like finally letting Dwight lean into it a little bit more probably warrants. But I don't know. We'll see.
I actually think that works. I've got a proposal for you. Can I rattle one off and see what you think?
Yeah, hit us with it.
What if we went fire drill, speech, organs, and then we move up the concussion part where he's nice to Pam to 4. And then Dwight's Christmas at 5. And then we've got a power block of the 3 new ones. And then we go Dwight Angela, Dwight Garden Party.
Okay, so sorry. Concussion at 4.
Yep. Belschnickel at 5.
Yep.
Belschnickel 5.
And then we could go like the Roy thing next. Pretty Woman. Yeah.
I think because the Roy thing is kind of in tandem with the concussion, like, Dwight actually showing a soft side and caring about Pam.
You just make that block.
We separated a little bit from the concussion. I think it's different enough that it belongs on the list.
Yeah.
But I think maybe more important to Dwight's character is, I think we should have the Angela affair probably at 6.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
I think so.
And then I actually think maybe even Pretty Woman and Training Day go above. I don't know. That's tough. The Roy moment is pretty spectacular.
I think if we went Pretty Woman, Roy, Training Day, Garden Party, I would feel good about that.
That seems... What do you think, Ian?
I see no issues with it at the moment.
All right. So, okay. So that would put Roy there, Training Day here.
With Ryan.
Yep. And then...
the Garden Party at 10.
Party. I like that. Do you,
I mean, I feel like...
Seeing it now...
I feel like Garden Party might be higher up than some of the stuff, like the Training Day with Ryan, like the initiation that he gives to Ryan. There's a lot of good one-liners in there, but I don't know if that as a moment is better than Dwight hosting the garden party with Jim's fake book.
I think the reason Training Day for me might get the edge is because it was Garden Party before Garden Party was Garden Party.
Yeah.
It's our first introduction to Cousin Moe's.
You're right.
It's the first time I think they go to the
Schrute
farm.
It was the first episode of Schrute Farm. So that makes sense then. Yeah, I'd agree with that. I wasn't a huge fan of Dwight doing the thing with Roy. I was a fan of the aftermath of it when Jim kept trying to
That was
give
pretty
stuff
great,
to
too.
Dwight.
He gives him the teddy bear.
I carried pepper spray on my person for 12 years, and they all laughed at me. Well, who's laughing now? But he's not actually laughing. He's like sobbing.
It's amazing.
I just think, yeah, it's important because it's the one time that Dwight's preparation for these ridiculous scenarios actually paid off. And it's one of the few times in the show where, like, it's a weird feeling. Like, when Roy storms in like that, you're, like, genuinely afraid.
Yeah.
It's not an emotion you feel too often.
Yeah, no, that made me genuinely uncomfortable as a viewer, like, seeing Roy come in ready to hurt Jim. Because my favorite character on the show is Jim. Like, it might seem like my favorite character is Dwight, but I think he has the best moments. And I was, like, genuinely, like, afraid for Jim. And so seeing Dwight come out of nowhere, I'd agree with you. I think Roy being on the list I think it needs to be on the list. It's important.
In that case, does it feel like we have a top 10 list here?
Feels to me like we got a list.
I don't see issue with it. So,
all right, Ian. Yeah. Do you want to recap for us numbers 10 through 1 of the best Dwight K Schrute moments?
I would love to, Kyle. Number 10 is Dwight hosting a garden party. Number 9 is Ryan's initiation at the farm. Number 8 is Dwight pepper spraying Roy. Number 7 is the Pretty Woman spoof with the wizard. Big mistake. Huge. Number 6 is the Angela affair. Number 5 is Dwight's Christmas, aka Belschnickel. Number 4 is the concussion. Number 3 is the CPR dummy getting the face cut off of it and Dwight wearing it, and harvesting the organs. Can't forget about that part. Number 2 is Dwight's speech. And to top off for the best Dwight K Schrute moment, this comes as no surprise that this didn't get moved. This is Dwight's fire drill in Stress Relief Part 1.
Amazing.
Amen. You were a wonderful guest. You absolutely knocked it out of the park.
Oh, I'm actually very happy to hear because I have been working on this for about a month now. Or a little over 2 months. I've been doing this list for a long time.
You've done now more work for this podcast than Mike and I combined. So thank you for treating it with such seriousness.
Oh,
more than we do.
Dignity it doesn't deserve.
If I come back, it'll happen again. If I come back, this whole thing will happen again with the same kind of preparation. So
beautiful.
Awesome. Thank you, Ian. Thank you much.
Thank you, friends.
Thank you as well. Peace.
Alrighty, friends. That was our top 10 for this week, but now we'd love to hear your top 10. So please check us out on all of our available social media outlets, traditional outlets, whatever outlets we have. Check us out on Twitter at top10km. That's all spelled out, top10km. Our email, top10km, spelled the same way, at gmail.com, or our site, top10km.podbean.com. All forms of communication accepted, except for serial killer notes. Please don't send us any of those.
If you like the pod, be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts so you never have to miss an episode of Top 10 ever again. If you didn't like it, please tell us why. We'll try to make the show better. Our theme music was composed by Kevin MacLeod, and our artwork was created by Erin Sant. You can check out her stuff at Sant Design on Instagram.
Alrighty, goons. We'll see you next week.